Today we're doing a big dive into the year 1990 in video gaming. Why 1990? Because it doesn't immediately jump to mind when you think of big years in video game history. Nothing seriously groundbreaking happened in 1990 in America that was forward-facing to the public at least. A lot happened behind the scenes, and we'll get to that in a bit. In Japan, though, they were right on the edge of the true next generation of games, with video games as a whole, both at home and in the arcades, about to experience a massive boom. Why not start right at the earliest stages? What was a normal year like? Back when arcades were still going strong, the NES was king, and the Sega Genesis had just released this past August. This is the year that Super Mario Bros. 3 releases in the States, the Super Nintendo wouldn't be out until the summer of '91, and Tom Kalinske joined Sega midway through 1990, bringing along with him the ideas that would lead to the famed console wars. Final Fight was dominating arcades as it was the top seller of the year in Japan and for 8 months out of the year in America. Japan moves forward into that next gen in late November as the Super Famicom is unleashed. Welcome to Perfect Reload. I figure we'll begin by going over some major events in America and Japan to set the tone of the world in 1990. The computer was just invented by America Online, and Japan power lasers were cranking out Super Mario faster than the speed of light. Europe doesn't count because video games hadn't arrived there yet. Let's call Tokyo and see what's happening. Wikipedia's article about major events in Japan for the entirety of 1990 doesn't have much. Nintendo releases a new system, Hulk Hogan main events the Tokyo Dome and defeats the evil Stan Hansen, and they crown a new emperor. That's about it. Apparently 1990 was not a very popular year in Japan. Also, their entire economy starts to crash. Meanwhile, in the land of pork ribs, Buster Douglas knocks out Mike Tyson and derails Nintendo's plans for him. Actually, this happens in Japan, but America has since taken credit for it. Driving Miss Daisy is the best movie at the Oscars, and 2 Live Crew keeps being as nasty as they want to be as they're found not guilty of obscenity. Going back to the Mike Tyson situation for a moment, the reason why 2 different versions of Punch-Out exist is due to 2 events happening in 1990. Tyson's deal for his likeness appearing in Punch-Out was coming to an end, and with him being the biggest boxer on the planet, it made sense to re-sign a deal as he had no signs of slowing down in the ring. However, a massive upset happened with James Buster Douglas knocking him out in Tokyo. Now, it's hard to say what exactly the reason is for him being removed from the game. Common perception would be that he just got knocked out by a good but very unremarkable fighter in Douglas, but the Mr. Dream version of Punch-Out started shipping in August of 1990, with that fight happening in February. It's possible Nintendo was able to make the revisions in that time complete with changes to marketing and packaging, but something leads me to believe that they simply just didn't want to spend the money on Tyson anymore. The game had been out for almost 3 years at this point, and they no longer needed the star power of Tyson to move more units. So what exactly did happen in 1990? Well, we had a slew of lesser hardware releases, as well as some fantastic games that still have a strong legacy today, like the inarguable greatest game of all time, Pit Fighter. Before we dip into the volcano of technology, there were a couple notable events this year, like the founding of THQ, the Nintendo World Championships, and the Nintendo vs. Color Dreams lawsuit about unlicensed game production. It's nice to see that Nintendo still has their long-standing tradition of suing people going strong to this day. While the world was waiting for the Super Nintendo, multiple manufacturers decided to either diversify their portfolio of hardware or get product into new territories. The success of the Game Boy was still fresh in the minds of many, so it wasn't surprising to see companies like NEC and Sega dip their toes in. NEC launches the Turbo Express. It's less like the Game Boy and more like the still years away Sega Nomad. It played TurboGrafx games. Unlike the monochrome and scaled-down ports or original titles on the Game Boy, the Turbo Express played those same home console titles in full color on the go. It was beyond its time but failed miserably, costing $250 or more than $500 today. The handheld had a TV tuner as well, pitching itself as a tremendous mobile entertainment device, but NEC just couldn't compete with the Goliath that was the Game Boy, and to be fair, not many had hope. The only non-Nintendo handheld to surpass 10.5 million units sold didn't release until the Sony PSP did in 2004. Ready to take on Nintendo like they were destined to do, Sega released their handheld, the Game Gear, in Japan in the fall of '90, with an American release the following spring. This is what I had as a kid. No, I was not loved enough to be a Game Boy child. No Pokemon Red or Blue or portable Kirby, Mario, or Zelda for me. No, instead, I had my brain massaged by the likes of Garfield Caught in the Act, The Incredible Hulk, and Batman Forever. It's a wonder how I kept video games or my parents in my life after that. Sticking with Sega, they finally brought the Mega Drive, known to the Americans as the Genesis, to Europe. This was combined with the ending of production for the ZX Spectrum home computer, which had dominated European video game play since Henry VIII invented it. The United Kingdom also finally found a use for their thumbs as Nintendo brought over the Game Boy, headlined by popular launch title Margaret Thatcher Total Elimination. SNK decided to try their hand at the home market by releasing the AES, which is still to this day an impressive piece of hardware. So many companies were trying to bring the arcade experience home. It was something happening in the industry since the days of the Atari. Just check out the Pac-Man 2600 port. The AES truly had the same specs as the arcade MVS cabinets, allowing a one-to-one at-home arcade experience. It was ungodly expensive, clocking in at $650 in 1990, equal to $1,200 today. That being said, it's still a very collectible system, and those invested are willing to spend multiple mortgage payments to pick up a single game. Now, how about them games? Unquestionably, the biggest release of the year was Super Mario Bros. 3. It's one of the greatest games of all time, and it took every Nintendo player by storm. It was the perfect swan song for the NES, as the system would soon be replaced. However, NES games continued releasing until 1994. Other big NES titles of the year were Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the arcade game, Mega Man 3, Castlevania 3, Dr. Mario, and Final Fantasy. Over in Japan, the big news, of course, was the Super Famicom. It was an upgrade in every way from the NES and came out guns blazing with a launch lineup that contained Super Mario World and F-Zero. The NES was far from dead overseas, though, and saw the debut of the Fire Emblem series, along with new entries in the Megami Tensei and Dragon Quest franchises. Getting away from consoles, the PC front was seeing big advances with Alpha Waves, the first ever 3D platformer game, the introduction of the Tycoon genre with Railroad Tycoon from the icon Sid Meier, and the first 2D platformer star on the PC in Commander Keen. We also got future legendary titles like The Secret of Monkey Island and the 6th entry in the Ultima series, Ultima 37, the quest for Soviet-funded space exploration. Shoot-em-ups were going crazy in Japan, as 3 out of the top 10 highest-grossing games in Japanese arcades were Gradius 3, Raiden, and Parodius. As much as I love to use Pit Fighter as a punchline, despite genuinely loving the game, its release in 1990 was a major landmark for arcade technology. It was the first game to use digitized actors, which is a technology that would be launched into the mainstream by Mortal Kombat. Following that, countless developers aped the style and launched a mad dash to make digitized sprite games both for the fighting genre to try and capitalize on the MK craze, or branching out to other genres to show that they were hip to the times. I thought it would be a nice time capsule to look at what were considered the best games of 1990 by the video game press. For Japan, we're going to be looking at Famitsu's awards, and for the United States, we'll use Electronic Gaming Monthly. Had. Their game of the year was Dragon Quest IV. Their handheld game of the year was Saga 2 on the Game Boy. Best graphics goes to Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse on the Sega Mega Drive. Best music goes to Dr. Mario. Best character goes to Yoshi. Best action game goes to F-Zero. And then they couldn't make up their minds as best RPG as a tie between Ys 2 and Sorcerian on the Mega Drive. Over in the land of butter, Electronic Gaming Monthly had Game of the Year going to Strider on the Genesis, Best Nintendo game goes to Castlevania 3, Best TurboGrafx-16 game goes to Ninja Spirit, which is a personal favorite of mine, Best Graphics also goes to Strider, Best System, the Genesis, Best New System, the Turbo Express, and Best RPG, Ys 1 and 2 on the TurboGrafx CD. Now that all the forward-facing stuff is out of the way, let's talk about what really was the most important event of the year. Tom Kalinske joining Sega midway through and helping to propel them in the war against Nintendo. Kalinske was a marketing genius who had previous stints at Mattel, Leapfrog, and Matchbox. His story has been turned into a book, Console Wars, written by Blake J. Harris, which was recently adapted into a documentary. Tom led the only real threat ever to Nintendo until Sony comes into the market. The story of the rise and fall of Sega of America is one of the craziest in all of video game history. It was a true crafty underdog against the stoic Goliath tale. And that pretty much wraps up 1990. A year on the surface that doesn't appear to have much outside of the furthering of the portable market, sequels in important franchises, and the early stages of the PC game revolution. But if you take your claws and wrap them into the guts of the year, you start to see the signs of what was to come. The early groundwork for the 90s boom of console gaming started right at the turn of the decade. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time!